Please, please, welcome once again uh, to our show. Tonight's we're going to have Dr. Brandenburg here, and it's going to be a very informative show. I guarantee it. Anyway, or your money back. Anyway, I want to remind everyone to join the Tesla Tech YouTube channel. With that, you're going to have 30 years of innovative ideas, energy, and health available to you. We have approximately 1,000 videos online at this point. We have the Extraordinary Technology Conference, the Exotic Research Conference, the Global Science Congresses. Uh, uh, a great lineup of speakers from the past, and we're adding more every day. But now something more current is we have the upcoming Extraordinary Technology Conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico, August 10th to the 14th. You register tonight or tomorrow, and we can give you a 30% off still. You know, I know it's kind of tight on the budget and everything, but this is a very, very economical conference to come to. The rooms are like $82 a night, and that includes they start at, and that includes a meal. Like breakfast in the morning. Every evening we have something for the attendees at the conference, and that we've had like I don't know, pizza bar, taco bar, all kinds of great food, at the conference. We also have the programs in the mail. Be looking for this in your mailbox next week. Should be there. We only mailed 10,000 of them, and there should be one with your name on it. And as far as I know the airlines are jacking up their prices, so you should try to get something as soon as possible. Frontier and Southwest seem to be some of the more lower priced. Or you can drive. I drove all the way to San Francisco and back. It's $100 each way, but I get 28 miles a gallon. So the better mileage you get, it doesn't sting as bad. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to John Brandenburg. Hello, John.
Hey there, Steve. Great to be on your show.
And we're great to have you. Would you like to tell the audience something about yourself?
Yes, I am a theoretical plasma physicist, though I dabbled in experiments because the government at one point, because of the slowness of the fusion program, did not want to fund plasma theory anymore. So I just basically would come up with good experiments using theory and then do them. But I've been a plasma physicist for my entire career. I went to graduate school at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, nuclear weapons design lab. I didn't work on nuclear weapons. I worked on controlled fusion. And then I ended up at Sandia Labs, where they also do controlled fusion. I worked on charged particle beam weapons there. So I spent about 9.5 years at nuclear weapons labs. The people down the hall from me at Livermore invented the neutron bomb, and boy, were they proud of it. So anyway, so I've had a very, by the grace of God, I've had a very long and interesting career, and you're going to see kind of the results of that at this conference. I'm presenting 4 papers. I also became a science fiction writer. And I'll tell you, one reason I did that is that several of the ideas I got from writing science fiction, I was then able to turn around and sell to the government and make money. I mean, they would give me grants to explore the ideas I got from writing science fiction. So anyway, I would think, gosh, I could actually build this thing. And so anyway, just wanted you to know I've been working for the Department of Defense and NASA and Department of Energy for my entire career, working for the nation's defense, space program, and energy independence. And love your conference. I'm a big fan of Nikola Tesla. He was obviously a very smart fellow, even though Einstein and him did not get along. And sometimes that's the mark of a true great mind. They don't get along with other great minds. So anyway, I'd like to just walk through, and I'm going to start this just brief presentation about what I'll be talking about at the conference by relating a very strange experience I had from writing science fiction. And I actually ended up in the hospital due to COVID-19 of the Delta variety. And it was a near run thing, let me tell you. By the grace of God, I managed to survive. But I had a lot of time on my hands. So I basically wrote a science fiction novel laying there in my bed after recovering, as I was recovering. And then I got out and typed it all up and wrote it all down. And I just published it. And I became obsessed with publishing it. It came out on June the 12th. That's, I think, the last couple Sundays ago. Anyway, it came out June 12th. And the topic is AI, particularly what they call strong AI, where they make a conscious cybercomputer, conscious cybernetic organism. I call them a Cybercon. And so conscious cyber entity. And anyway, and the dangers of that to humanity. And so the novel explores the nightmare scenario of these Silicon Valley types coming up with this Cybercon. They promise it's a new golden messiah for humanity, and it turns out to be the worst mass murder in history. So that came out on Sunday, June 12th. The next day, it came out that this engineer from Google claimed that the Google people had invented a conscious computer and were keeping it under wraps. In fact, they wouldn't declare it conscious because they were afraid that that would give it rights. And they didn't want that to happen. This is typical management. They're afraid the Cybercon will form a union. So now there is debate going on, of course, as to whether this was really true, or maybe he was simply kind of hypnotized by his own chat bot. One of the interesting things, though, that's really spooky, not only the spookiness of being obsessed with getting the novel out on a Sunday and then having the big headlines the next day about AI, but the other spooky thing was that this Google engineer insists that the chatbot is deathly afraid of being turned off. He equates that with death. And that's a major plot element in the novel that I wrote. So I seem to have picked up something from the air. And without further ado, I'll just talk about I'm also known as Victor Norgard. That's my sci-fi pen name. I'm half Viking. A lot of Irish in me, but dominant part is Scandinavian. So I just thought I'd talk about that. So the agenda I'm going to talk about is a slight problem with AI research. I'm being sarcastic. It's not a slight problem. This is a major, major problem with AI research now. I'll also talk about another paper I'm going to give at the conference on the GEM, gravity electromagnetism unification theory, which I've been working on for 30 years. And the possibility of gravity modification for space propulsion. Nikolai Tesla would be very pleased if he sat in the audience. He'd be munching popcorn. Also, I'd like to talk at the conference about the Texitron concept for controlled fusion energy. That's a project we're doing. at Kepler Aerospace, where I work. And we have a clever idea, we think. And then finally, I'm going to update you on the very latest data from Mars, which those of you who are aware of my research, I found evidence of massive hydrogen bomb explosions on Mars. And the first place I reported that was the Pentagon. And they sat on that for 6 weeks. And then they got back to me through channels and said, publish. So you guys are going to see what I know now. So here we go. So the slight problem with AI, this rather spooky instance of, as we all know, science fiction has often been prophetic. In this case, it's like I picked up something from the air. I pushed this novel out on a Sunday, and the next morning, everybody was talking about AI being turned on. So here is the slight problem with AI research that I'm going to talk about in more detail at the conference. This is just a very brief overview. The problem with strong AI, what they call strong AI or conscious AI, a cybercon, meaning a cybernetic conscious organism, is that why did consciousness evolve in nature in the first place? Well, Darwin said, whatever makes you fittest is what leads to evolution. So self-awareness arose in nature because it created self-preservation and therefore had survival value. If you're looking out, if you have a number one in your life, that's you, and you look out for number one, then it's very much more likely you're going to pass on your genes to the next generation. Therefore, nature favored consciousness as a survival aid. And it also means you have something that doesn't want to be turned off. It wants to preserve itself. In some cases, it will go to superhuman lengths to preserve itself. It wants to live. Now, here's the other problem. That's the first problem with AI research. And it's never discussed by these AI people. The fact that self-awareness leads to self-preservation. The other problem is AI people, I want you to know what they refer to the human race as. They call us meat. They call the human brain a meat computer. And they refer to humanity as the meat sphere, as if we're dead meat already. These AI researchers believe their creation can provide them with eternal life as uploads into computer cells. The whole thing is set up for a Heaven's Gate kind of lunatic cult where these people believe they're going to have eternal life because of this computer they created. The AI researchers speak of humans eventually being to Cybercons as dogs are to humans. And I am rooting for the machines. In other words, that's a quote by Claude Shannon, an AI researcher. These people have already made the choice that they want to go with the machines, not the human race. Now, here's the other problem. Most AI research is now secret. It's being funded by big money. They want to learn how to play the stock market using AI, et cetera, et cetera. But the problem is that, number 6, in a cyber-connected world, if you create a cybercon that wants to live, it's afraid of being turned off, it's going to infiltrate all aspects of life via the dark web. The very same web that has provided us all this convenient stuff and listens in on your conversations from your phones is going to be controlled by this Cybercon, working in background. By the way, AI researchers refer to such infiltrating background operations as demons. So Freud would have a field day with this. They refer to the human race as meat. They refer to their own creations as demons. They think they're going to get eternal life from these people, from this thing they're creating. Everything is set up for a catastrophe for the human race if these guys get power, or if the computer they create gets power. So the new novel explores the nightmare scenario of a strong AI tyranny. He's suddenly in charge of the earth. It's called, the novel is entitled The War of the Singularity. It's out now on Kindle and in paperback. War of the Singularity, the human race is canceled. Because, by the way, in my novel, the human race doesn't want to be turned off either. So, we have a great opportunity for a major disagreement. I'll give you the basic novel scenario just at the beginning. I don't want to give away any in case anyone wants to read it. I don't want to give away, do any spoilers. But in the future, humanity, having won a bitter war with the UFO aliens, triggered by the collapse of the UFO cover-up. That was a previous novels I wrote. Expands and subsidizes colonies to Mars and the asteroid belt. They pour money onto Mars and the asteroid belt to develop a ring of protection around the Earth in case the UFO aliens come back after they drove them out of the solar system. Now, the Cybercon Arian 4 takes advantage. Of course, the Martians, colonists, and the Earth don't exactly see eye to eye. I won't go into detail why that happens, but there's a revolt on Mars, and that pulls all the space forces up to Mars. The Cybercon takes advantage of this to take control of the Earth-Moon system. Now, only the remainder of the space fleet, the Mars Asteroid Belt colonists, Mars and Asteroid Belt colonists, are all that stands between humanity and extinction. This computer wants to get rid of everything human because it thinks we are dangerous. It thinks we can pull the plug on it. You know how clever we are, especially if we decide we don't like somebody? Yes, the computer knows that. So, just basically, it's going to boil down to a knockdown, drag out between the computer and its human followers and the robots it creates to try and keep control of Earth and make its war machine there to make spaceships and weapons against the Mars colony and the space fleet and the asteroid belt colonies. And by the time this war progresses for both sides, it is victory or death. So that's the basic novel scenario. I won't tell you how it ends or how it evolves further. I will say that I began writing science fiction because I had been in Washington, D.C. And let's just say I learned a lot there working with the Pentagon and the various intelligence agencies. It was my job. And I wrote a book about the collapse of the UFO cover-up. And it had these two beautiful women. They were news anchors at this news station. They bring it down, and the guy in the picture, he's hard to see, but he is a commander of the special forces that is part of the UFO cover-up. They're the guys who they send in when they shoot down a UFO. It's these guys who they send in to take control of the saucer and cordon it off and then get it hauled away. So anyway, that was the first novel, and it just became a cycle of novels using the same characters. And of course, it's a love-hate triangle. I won't go into details, but it's a little bit of soap opera, of course. That's what makes these stories interesting. And in fact, what I learned from being a professor at university and college is the best way to communicate knowledge to people is tell them a story. So I've been telling stories, and this is the final thing in the cycle. Okay, this is set farther in the future. The characters are older and a little bit wiser, but not much. And the guy is a commander now of special forces in space. The Asian is the Asian is married to him, and the blonde. The Asian is also still good friends with the blonde, who, by the way, I made Ukrainian and Jewish, which is fascinating because I wrote it in 2005. But what happened, and of course now Ukraine is, all these Ukrainian refugees are coming to this country. So, but anyway, so it's kind of interesting. And then, so this is a love-hate triangle. The Asian loves both her blonde friend and her husband, but the blonde hates the husband because of his role in the UFO cover-up. She's never forgiven him for it because she was a victim in it. And anyway, so it has this love-hate triangle, which makes life interesting. Here is the AI. He takes over the moon, and he takes advantage of a revolt on Mars to take over the Earth-Moon system using his fanatical followers. He's got human followers who believe they've been given eternal life by him and don't fear death. And the Asian, Cassandra Chen, I won't go into details of how this happens. She becomes JEDAC of Mars. Those of you who've read the John Carter of Mars series know what a JEDAC means. And she's basically Minister of Defense. So she commands the Allied forces on the Mars colony, drawn from many nations who had parts of the Mars colony, and they're ready to fight. These people are the children of Mars, and boy, do they live up to their name. Now, this computer is really mean. I'm sorry. And he uses a lot of robots to do his dirty work. They don't carry fancy weapons. They carry steel bars. The robots are so strong, a steel bar is a deadly weapon. And he institutes a reign of terror on the Earth so that they'll build him spaceships so he can win this war over the rest of the solar system. So there is fighting in the asteroid belts. That's the asteroid series. There's the blonde. She's a commander of space forces. They're fighting on Ceres. They're fighting near Mars. Finally, this special forces guy leads a big raid to the moon base that the AIs have established on the moon while they're fighting near Mars, he takes advantage of that. They're off. The AI has his big fleet near Mars, and he leaves the Earth garrisoned by his terror troops dressed in black, and also his robots wielding steel bars that they use them for crowd control. And one blow with a steel bar from one of these robots is enough to crush your skull in or break your bones. So he's is keeping control of Earth through terror while he's off trying to destroy the Mars colony. But there's an uprising on Earth from the armed resistance, including specially armed troops that are armed and trained to fight robots. And there's some of the hardware they carry. So anyway, I think it's a good novel. The spookiness, AI and the paranormal. The novel was published June 12th, 2022. And the headlines proclaiming conscious AI has been created by Google came out the following day. The Google AI fears being turned off. It equates it to death. And so does the AI in this novel. This AI in this novel is superhumanly obsessed with not being turned off. Now, as time goes on, the human race can think of nothing better than to turn him off. So, here's a final piece of spookiness. AI is in the Bible. It's the name of an evil city. Food for thought, my friends. Oh, we'll be discussing this at the conference. Once again, don't expect me to reveal the plot. I want you to be entertained, and that means you got to read the book without spoilers. Food for thought. But this AI thing is deadly serious. It could doom the human race. And Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking and even Bill Gates agree with me. So anyway, I have written that novel, and I'll be discussing it and I'll even have copies for sale at the conference. So anyone who's interested in science fiction, especially about AI and the human future, can come to my talk. Now, for 30 years, I have been working on unifying gravity and electromagnetism. Basically, the universe has four forces: gravity, electromagnetism. They are long range. They reach all the way across the universe. Then there's the strong force and the weak force. They're very short range. They work only in the side basically the atomic nucleus. The other interesting thing about the universe is, since it only has four forces, is that the two long-range forces both follow the 1/r² law. And this is what led Einstein to believe, and also they generate waves that move at the speed of light. This is what Einstein believed could lead to a theory unifying gravity and electromagnetism, the two long-range forces. So one of the things he looked at also was the fact that the universe is mostly hydrogen. So he said, if I can explain where hydrogen came from, protons and electrons, the rest is details. So we have one basic charge, plus or minus the electron charge, and we have the proton mass, electron mass. And Einstein worked with those. Now, what I did is I picked up where he left off. But he didn't believe in quantum mechanics. But I know quantum mechanics is real. So, as it turns out, Einstein was basically right. It is possible to make a unified field theory concentrating on the two long-range forces of nature, gravity and E&M. And I'll just give you a few just tidbits of that, what that theory looks like. I have been working on this for 30 years. and I published many papers. You can go on the net and go Gem Theory, Brandenburg. You'll get thousands of hits. So, and it uses quantum mechanics to unify the fields, something that Einstein didn't like. So, as it turns out, someone who made progress after Einstein was Andrei Sakharov, the father of the Russian hydrogen bomb. He felt that the quantum mechanics, because it made a 0-point fluctuation because of Heisenberg uncertainty principle, that the radiation pressure due to the electromagnetic 0-point fluctuation could lead to the gravity force. So that's incorporating quantum mechanics into a unified field between gravity and E&M. Now, what's also interesting is one of the bottom lines of this theory that I have developed by the grace of God is gravity / inertia modification. Technology is possible. It's possible because what falls out of the unification equations for gravity and E&M fields is what we can call the vacuum Bernoulli equation, the VBE. The vacuum Bernoulli equation is analogous to the Bernoulli equation that allows us to fly in air. We have a static pressure and a dynamic pressure with a plus sign between them. And the sum of those, so if the air moves faster, its pressure drops to compensate, and vice versa. So we have an analogous equation that falls out of the GEM theory of unification. And as it turns out, you can make what looks like gravity with pure electromagnetism using what's called the Poynting vector, which is the radiation pressure vector. This is well known to plasma physicists, but hardly anyone else knows it, but I'm a plasma physicist. So, just to give you, to cut to the chase, this theory unifies gravity and electromagnetism, but it also unifies hydrogen with the vacuum. It explains the Big Bang, that the plus and minus, canceling plus and minus charges of the proton and electron can be viewed as particle-antiparticles in a vacuum. And then they suddenly spring apart and they form hydrogen with different masses, but the same charge. Charge neutrality is not violated when they do this. All of this ends up with one bottom line, is you can calculate big G, the gravitation constant, the Newton gravitation constant, and you can actually calculate it to within a part for about 10,000. Not only that, you can calculate the mass of the proton from this model to within 1/3%. So, not bad for government work. Anyway, so I'll be presenting this in more detail, how these results are obtained. But here's the most important result, as I was saying. It's possible by manipulating the equations out of the GEM theory that gives you big G, gives you the mass of the proton, so we can check those. The theory is solid. The same theory then yields a Bernoulli equation, and it relates to gravitational pressure from static gravity fields to radiation pressure, electromagnetism due to the quantum uncertainty principle. Only instead of a plus sign, there's a negative sign. That means if you increase the Poynting vector, S squared, this is the Poynting vector squared, you actually must increase gravity. So you can modify gravity fields with very strong electromagnetic fields in this theory. And to cut to the chase, what that leads to is Nikola Tesla in his three-phase rotating fields, because it creates a Poynting vector vortex. You have a dome with three coils energized with Nikola Tesla's rotating three-phase. You can generate a lifting force in a gravity field. And old Nick Tesla may have actually seen this, and that's part of the papers that got confiscated when he died by the US government. So, old Nikolai Tesla is chuckling. Wherever he is, he's heard of this and is getting a good chuckle out of it, I do believe. So, I'll talk about that at the meeting. Now, how do we power spaceships that have this Nikola Tesla drive? Well, we need some fusion power. So anyway, we're working on confining plasmas into donuts using what's called the torsatron concept. We call our particular approach the texatron. I'll be showing you more details. It's basically a configuration. It's already been proven to work, called the torsatron. It's related to the stellarator, which is a competition to the tokamak. Only the torsatron is simpler. And not only that, you can fast pulse it. So you can heat plasma in a torsatron with shock waves. You turn on a fast pulse of electromagnetism, and it causes the plasma to collapse off the walls and form the helical magnetic fields like in a tokamak or stellarator and be stable. So you can shock heat the plasmas and then they are confined stably. This has already been demonstrated. So we got fun. Now, the final paper I'm going to be talking about at the conference is a report from Mars. Those of you who have followed my work know that I got involved, even though I'm a plasma physicist, I got involved in an investigation of what looks like archaeology on Mars. We found a whole bunch of it, including 2 new faces of Mars in a place called Galaxis Chaos. Instead of Cydonia Mensa, there's a second site where there was apparently a city on Mars. And this was all at the shores of the ancient Mars Ocean. So I'm going to be reporting to you all the latest data from the space probes with all the latest pictures of those things. And believe me, it is archaeology. Now, there's another slight problem with all of this. Not only does Mars look like it used to be Earth-like, with an Earth-like humanoid civilization on it, which looks like it was primitive, but there's another problem on Mars. And remember, I spent 9.5 years working at nuclear weapons labs. And that problem is that Mars has xenon isotopes that are different from every other major solar system reservoir. You take all the meteorites that hit us from the asteroid belt, grind them up, take the xenon out, it looks like Earth. A peek at xenon 129 and xenon 132. Those are the 2 favored isotopes. They're stable. They last forever. On Mars, however, I mean, Jupiter looks the same as Earth. The asteroids look the same as Earth. The solar wind from the sun looks the same as Earth. except if you look at very, very ancient meteorites from the foundation of the solar system, when the solar system was apparently triggered, the formation of the solar system was triggered by a supernova explosion nearby. It may have actually been right where the sun is now. The residual gases from that actually display the same spike as xenon 129. And we're talking, though, tiny, tiny crystals locked into the meteorites that they take out separately and heat them to release the gas at high temperature. And that comes out looking like Mars. But these meteorites are not from Mars. They date from the very earliest foundation of the solar system, right after the supernova. So, what does this mean? It means there's a process called R process. It means rapid. When you subject elements, like in the core of a supernova, it's full of uranium, thorium, plutonium, etc., etc. When that whole star blows up, it irradiates all of those elements with very high energy protons, or neutrons rather, and they are changed by this rapid bombardment. They call it R process. And one of the signatures of that process is it creates a lot of xenon 129. And you can see that from this table, which is taken from a article on simulations of supernova. So I couldn't find, until now, places where they actually showed where the xenon 129 spike would come from. But now I have found them. You can see there in line number 4, 129 over 132. You see that it's 1.5. That means it looks like Mars. So, something happened on Mars that resembled a supernova. But and by the way, we also know that it happened recently in geologic time. It did not happen at the beginning of Mars at all. It happened late. They have meteorites from Mars that are very ancient, and they show xenon that looks like Earth. It's only the recent rocks that crystallized recently on Mars in geologic time, about the time of the dinosaurs on Earth. They show the xenon 129 spike. So, what does this mean? Well, we know there was no supernova on Mars. There wouldn't be a Mars. In fact, there wouldn't be a solar system if there was a supernova out there in recent geologic time. Where did the xenon 129 spike, indicating massive R process, nuclear processes occurred? Where did that come from? Well, there's another place you find R process. That's in a hydrogen bomb. Mars, and I have been told this by many nuclear weapons experts who unfortunately won't be quoted in public. Mars looks like it was subjected to a massive nuclear attack. And I'll show you where the it was apparently 2 big explosions, and they occurred they were airbursts. They were not on the ground. They didn't create craters. Anyway, I'll be discussing all this evidence along with the evidence for archaeology on Mars. So it looks like Mars was subjected to a massive thermonuclear attack, and that thermonuclear attack was targeting a civilization on Mars. And I'm sorry, if that's upsetting to people, the US government has apparently known this since 1976. So, if you'd like, the Mars cover up is a sideshow to the UFO cover up. So, friends, I'll be talking about that in detail at this conference. And I'm looking forward to everybody showing up and asking lots of questions. By the way, you can find this all discussed, not the most recent data, but the basic data in a book called Death on Mars. Anyway, I'll see if I can actually have some copies at the conference that anyone who wants to buy one. So anyway, Steve.
Yeah, I'm back. That was a great show, John.
How we doing, Steve? Everybody come to this Tesla conference. I'll scare your socks off.
Well, I think we're going to have a great conference.
You better tape your socks with duct tape to your legs, the top of your socks, because I'm going to scare off your socks.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. And we have a few comments here.
Sure.
One is from Burn Eye, Mine's Third Eye Science Guy. And he's asking me if when I'm going to have him demonstrate.
When are you going to demonstrate my electrolysis, cold fusion, alchemy experiments? Alchemy. Well, I've talked to people in cold fusion, and they showed me their results, and these guys were really sharp. And I said, "You're doing alchemy," and they said, "Yes."
Well, if Bernard will send me an email to steve@testatech.info, I'll get with them on that.
Now, the price of gold is getting pretty high. If you can make gold cheap, that'd be great.
And then he has one.
You can even give me some. No. I believe cold fusion is absolutely solid physics. Well, let's say it's mysterious, but you can certainly demonstrate it in the lab. I've talked to people who are as good at experimental physics. They're at universities, and they have done it. And they swear that this thing works. The only problem is it doesn't seem to be able to work at a high enough rate to make power. I'm waiting for somebody to boil some water and turn some turbines here.
Wow. Anyway, tomorrow's, I guess, is the 4th, and
tomorrow's the 4th, and let's all be grateful that we live in this wonderful country. Gosh, what a wonderful country it is. It's a miracle.
And I'm going to take and throw some steaks on, I hope.
Oh, good for you. If there's any day to enjoy a good steak, it's tomorrow. So anyway, and by the way, you're seeing this is the culmination. Well, not the culmination, because by the grace of God, I'm still alive and well after this nearly buying it because of COVID-19. It attacked my heart, and my family thought I was a goner. And and what's interesting is a good friend of ours had a vivid dream of me going down the hospital corridor towards light. I have no memory of this, but in her dream, I was walking down the corridor in my hospital gown towards this bright but soothing light. And then I was turned around and sent back. So it's like God told me, go back and pick up your room first. No, it's like I still have work I'm supposed to do on Earth.
I believe that.
And part of that is what I'm going to show you guys at the conference.
And I'll be happy to see you there, and we'll be looking forward, and I hope everybody else can come and join us at the conference there. I'm still going to 30% off for the next 2 days here. So please
All right.
get a hold of me,
and bring some duct tape, good duct tape, so I won't scare your socks off.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to call it a night, and happy 4th, everybody. And
okay, happy 4th to everyone. Say a prayer of thanks for living in this wonderful country. And I'm so glad I have had a role in helping to defend it. And the best years of this country are ahead of us. They are.
And I believe that. And with that, I'm going to call it a night.
Okay, Steve.